Все, включаю. Чуть левее. Трошки.
Це 13.
It's April 13, Ukraine Media Center Ukraine 4 continues its operation. My name is Vasil Samachvalov, and we start our next briefing right now. We will be talking about the state of affairs in Ukrainian agrarian sector, specifically about the sowing campaign of 2023. Our guest today is Denis Marchuk, the Deputy Chairman of the Ukrainian Agrarian Council. Good afternoon, Mr. Denis. Good afternoon. The sowing campaign today, how many fields are sown, who is out in the fields, what do we sow, and how the weather influences the sowing campaign, because it's raining, it's been raining for 2 weeks in Ukraine. For the last 2 weeks, well, since the end of the March, the active campaign was initiated in Ukraine in all regions, only save for those where the active warfare is still on or the territories are densely mined. Now it's about 700,000 hectares of land that were sown. I will be able to provide the detailed information later. Well, the campaign is going on even during the war in Ukraine in 2023. The presence of the funds for the agrarians ensures the field works for all the agrarians in Ukraine, because they are able to procure all the necessary elements of the campaign. I mean the mineral fertilizers, the sowing material, the fuel, everything. And we want to emphasize that during 2023 the agrarians still had some reserves of those materials. In 23 they did not get the additional funding due to the fact that they were not able to sell their crops in full last season, and they don't have necessary amount of the turnover funds for the time being. And under conditions like this, we have to state that we have certain difficulties. However, in general, it should not reflect on the total indicators in terms of the total sowing area, and the main indicators that will influence it is only the temporary occupation of the territories and dense contamination with mines. As according to the Ministry of Agrarian Policy information, about 7 million hectares of land will not be used during this campaign this year. We plan to sow around 19 million hectares, which will provide good indicators of harvest during the wartime, given the wartime, because according to our indicators, we will have to ensure that in full the food security for Ukraine, and maybe even some experts, the harvest will grow around 19% compared to the last year. About 230 billion hryvnias are about to be spent, which is a handsome amount of money. And as I mentioned, not all of the agrarians have it. As to the crops that the agrarians will be specialized, they will be identical to those used before the war. However, there are certain accents made by the manufacturers, so they could make at least any money. And as the practice of 2022 has shown, the export potential was realized through oil culture. So talking about the western Ukraine, they will be more specialized in soy, for example, and the south of Ukraine, they will be focused more on sunflower, and the central Ukraine will be focusing on both sunflower and soy. We will see the increase in oil cultures. About 6 million hectares of land will be given to the sunflower. The growth of corn, the territories where the corn is grown, will be cut, because in some regions it was still staying in the field. The logistics was quite expensive, and the processing costs were quite high, so nobody made anything on corn. So sunflower, soy, rape will be something that the agrarians will focus on. So what about the grains, about the wheat? So according to our estimates, we will see less than 10 million less comparing to the last year this summer. If we harvested 53 million tons of both bean and grain crop cultures, this year the output will be around 44 million tons. However, it's too early to state something for the time being. We are only basing our statements on our estimates, because for the time being, again, not all of the elements are in the disposal of all of the agrarians. The price for mineral fertilizer started falling a little bit, so a month ago the manufacturers were provided to 30 to 40% with the mineral fertilizers. That now this number grew up to 60%. However, it's not yet 100%, so this indicator will reflect on the harvest that we get from 1 hectare. So how should we solve the problem with fertilizers? It's only about financing. We're talking about the system of lending for the agrarians. In March, 579 started working for the agrarians, which was not adopted for a long time, and it created certain panic in the crowds of the agrarian manufacturers. So they were worried they will not have funds to exercise the campaign. However, the mechanism was only to be improved. There are certain limitations for legal entities. If you are a legal entity, for example, if you exhausted the limit of 90 million hryvnias, you will not be able to borrow more. But if we check the average Ukrainian business, where all of the elements grew in cost for the sowing campaign, many such manufacturers used 90 million limit in full. So what we emphasize on in communication with the ministries of the finance and Ministry of Agrarian Policy, we emphasize that this limit should be increased at least twice, so that the manufacturers could get prepared more efficiently to the sowing campaign. And for the people that hear those amounts of money, I want to highlight that those are not free money. There will be an interest paid on that, and those money will allow the agrarians to make much more, bring better return on investment. Because when they pay taxes and when they return those funds, the state only wins. Those are the funds quite required, quite necessary for the sowing campaign for all the agrarians. Questions from the floor. Anastasia Kravchenko, Ukrinform. My question is about Poland. Last week, Ukraine and Poland made an agreement that Ukraine would not import import wheat to Poland until this marketing season. So how will this impact Ukrainian export? Will it have any influence on sowing campaign, on funding of Ukrainian agrarians? What will be the effect? Well, in our opinion, I represent the agrarian manufacturers, including those who exported through our land routes to the western regions. Well, the situation is overheated. There is a lot of politics. For example, there are elections coming in Poland in October. Someone used this emotional aspect of the Polish farmers. There are several million Polish farmers, several million businesses, and they understand that the price lowered. It's lower comparing to the March last year, but it's a global trend. The price went down 25-30 euro, and under the influence of those emotions, they used this fact to blame everything on Ukraine. So while the prices were higher, the presence of Ukraine was normal. But as to Ukraine, the situation may become really different, because the regions along the border, such as Rivne, Volyn region, Ivano-Frankivsk, Kyiv region, they had their counterparts in Poland, and they increased their export to those territory. So they were trying to sell the wheat that they had in their silos. I was talking to an agrarian from Khmelnytsk region. They said 30-40% of the wheat that we counted on to be sold, it's still there in the silos, and they have no funds for the sowing campaign for the time being. The positive aspect, however, is that we were able to achieve good results regarding the transit in our negotiations. Ukraine has access to the seaports of Poland. Now, the logistics system of Poland, well, it's worth saying it needs improvement, because the volumes that we may be able to transport for Poland, they only have capacities to export them through the ports within 1 year. So we have to develop our logistic ties with Europe as well. The situation not only with Poland is threatened, because there are urges to stop export through the territory of Romania as well. There is a strike announced in that country, and starting from June 23 to March 24, they want to suspend any exports, and this is a huge restriction, because all the new ports that go from Ukraine to Romania, they created a great advantage for the third countries of the world. This is a strategic direction for us, so we should better try to negotiate the transit through Romania, because in case of Romania, it's 95% is transit. We didn't trade our wheat inside the country itself in Romania, because if, for example, we were selling our wheat in Poland, because Ukrainian product is very high quality and it comes at good price, so in Romania it looks like blackmailing, but again, at cost of reduction the price for their products, they want to just obtain subsidies from Brussels, and the monies are already allocated. They counted it and they thought the funds are still not sufficient. So if we analyze the calculations by the Polish side, they say they lost about 30 billion euro. Where this amount comes from, nobody knows. Even no one can say how much grain is still remaining in the silos. Someone say 4 million, some say 10 million, which says that the farmers themselves, they are under the influence of the messages that are created by a third country, and such third country may be aggressor, which is not interested in good bilateral relations of both countries, because we do a lot together for our victory. Are there any more questions? Well, and based on what you said, do the Ukrainian agrarian associations try to contact the Polish associations or Romanian associations to explain the situation, or is it only happening on the level of ministers and governments? Yes, there is communication between us. We are in direct communication with the business halls of Republic of Poland. We had meeting recently in the representative offices, in the representative office of Poland in Kyiv. There was a meeting in Lviv as well during different conferences. About a month ago there was a conference and negotiations about this problem. There was a first agreement signed between Poland and Ukraine as to the restriction of phytosanitary control in Poland. And this dialogue is still going on through the media component, because we try to communicate our position through media channels as well in Poland. Another thing is that the Polish, they are more focused on elections. They understand that they may lose some pro-government positions, I mean the party which is in power at the moment, so they follow those messages to a certain extent. So we pay more attention in our communication with Brussels. The Ukrainian Agrarian Council forwarded the letters to the President of European Commission to retain the transition, and transition is still active, and to restrict the phytosanitary positions which delay the transit of both vehicles and vessels, because before that the vessels which were supposed to spend 4 to 5 days for inspections, it took them 10 days. So those are the logistic losses that were put on the manufacturers. So we expect for some weight stands from the Brussels. We understand that Romania, Poland are the borders of the European Union, and the political resolution is being taken finally by the Brussels. So we hope that there will be no levies imposed, and the last year program will be still in effect, which is in effect since June last year, and we hope that our land corridors will continue operating, and not only continue operating but will be developed as well. So I want to say that the Ukrainian grain is very difficult to compete with. Is there any solution which will be satisfactory for both Poland and Ukraine, or Ukraine and Romania? And if there is such solution, what is it? Yes, we expect to see such solution. There was an appeal from Mykola Solsky, the Minister of Agrarian Policy, to the Minister of Equal Ministry of Poland. There will be legal documents already registered as to the transit and sale of Ukrainian products. So until the moment that this document would be promulgated, it's difficult to comment anything. Our priority was to ensure that transit, but also to sell some small amounts of grain in Poland as well. For example, last year we sold 700,000 tons of wheat in Poland. It's not something that crashed the market. And as to the corn, we sold a little bit more than 1 million. So it's a lot of politics here and not the economy. If we don't have any more questions on the floor, I will have my last question. Well, now the structure of a sowing campaign is changing. How ready are we logistically to service this new infrastructure when there will be more oil and less grain, or more sunflower or more soil? How is our infrastructure prepared to this? Ukraine logistics system is in principle at the top moment. In 21 we received more than 100 million hectares of land. That was a record indicator. There was not always enough vehicles or even the railway cars, but under conditions of temporary decrease, those resources available in Ukraine, they are enough for all the works. The other question is how efficiently we would be able to use and sell it. Again, Russia insists on cutting the grain deal to 60 days. So on the 18th of May, the period of its operation expires. However, Ukraine still states that we will keep on exporting under our negotiations, under our agreements with United Nations and Turkey. And some of the manufacturers, they start asking themselves whether they need to sow something if they wouldn't be able to sell it. Because like last year, it was like half a year that the agrarians were not able to sell anything, and it did not influence not only the economy of the country but the whole regions themselves. Well, as we say in Ukraine, if there is a bread, there is hope. If there is hope, there is life. So we all rely on the armed forces, and this is how we build our life in Ukraine. So we wrap up at this positive note, and we continue our work tomorrow. See you shortly.